All right, welcome to the week 6 of the webinar for Adjusting Bootcamp. I certainly hope you guys have gotten a lot out of this. I've enjoyed watching videos. I've enjoyed watching people's adjusting, and it's been a lot of fun for me. So let's get right into it. We have a lot to go over this time, so let's just jump right into it. Let's see here. Oops, I got to hit my thing here. Oh yeah, Dr. Anderson loves that eagle going up and down in all the clouds. So look at him go. All right, what determines how much external force is necessary to make the knee-chest adjustment? And one thing that I would say, looking at this, is the internal resistance of the patient. But I want to elaborate on that just a little bit because I think it's really important to really get a concept here, and that's this. We've developed something called 6 steps, and when I say we have developed it, what we did was this. Back in the early 90s and the mid 90s, well, all the way through the 90s, we were with Dr. Kale, Michael Kale, and so Dr. Kale had a program for knee chest, and very thankful that he had that. Dr. Kale was very gifted. And I would say he was an absolute master at the knee-chest adjustment. He was also a master at the philosophy of understanding upper cervical, and he was a really good speaker in that sense. He could really captivate an audience, and he was really awesome that way. But he could deliver the goods. He was just a phenomenal adjuster, just absolute master. I don't know what else to say. He was just, top of the tops. And so, but one thing, and I'm not criticizing Dr. Kale because everything is in progress, everything comes in its time, but one thing that Dr. Kale was a little short on, and I would say that would be in the teaching aspect. And the reason why I say that is because, Dr. Kale would have us say, he would, teach from the old method of the torque and toggle and the piezoform, this and that. But when you watched him, that wasn't what was going on at all. So really, to learn from Dr. Kale, you had to observe Dr. Kale. And so the 6 steps that, I really developed that through the idea of going through each mechanical step that Dr. Kale really did. And we patterned our adjustment after Dr. Kale, and you can see, Dr. Dalius, of course, he worked with Dr. Kale, and Dr. Anderson also was in the midst in the 90s when we were all there. And so, through the course of that time being around Kale, we all looked through this. Now, I had originally written out these 6 steps. I originally did that, but Dr. Anderson, Dr. Dalius has also helped with that because we came together and collaborated. So, okay, what was Kale doing here? What was Kale doing there? Watching videos, remembering back from where he was doing it, and also the way we did the adjustment and how it compared to the way he was doing it, and so all these different things. But anyway, we developed those 6 steps, and I go all this elaboration to get to this, that the 6 steps are really designed to reduce the internal resistance of the patient. And the more you can accomplish that, the less force it's really going to take to get your goal, which is actually to overcome the internal resistance and to have the longest possible set where, the line stays straight longest, and we have more healing that can happen when the line is straight and there's relatively little interference coming through the brainstem and how the brainstem is functioning and so on and so forth. So, when it comes right down to it, Kale said this. He said, and he used to call me Rob. He said, Rob, there's only just a few things that can really go wrong that's going to cause a problem with the adjustment. And it's so funny because Kale was, as I said, he was a master, but not a communicator in he wasn't a step-by-step guy. He was big picture. He was not a step-by-step guy. So he'd say, well, there's just a few things that could go wrong, and then we would just wait until he would release that. What is the what is it, And he'd say a few things here and there, but it never was in a systematic way. That's the reason why that's the birth of the 6 steps. So, but anyway, it really is true. Doctor-patient position, absolute key. You think that finding the contact is not so much with internal resistance, but it is. If you're on step 2 and you're trying to get a contact, but you're in there pushing too hard, you're taking too long, you're doing all these things, you know, if it's taking you over 3 seconds to find that contact point, you know, you're too long there, and the patient knows that, and when they know that, they're going to resist you, and when they resist you, what do they call that? They call that internal resistance, right? So it should just take a second or two to get that contact. You just keep on working until you do it. And where I find most people do a mistake on this, especially the newer ones, is that they dig around trying to, you know, they push on the C2 spinous process. You know where it's at without even looking. You don't even have to feel it. You know where it's at. You see that crease coming up the neck like we taught. You look down, you see it. I put a thumb in the mastoid fossa there, and 3/4 of the distance, you're going to see the atlas, and of course you already feel the axis spinous process. Okay, so the next step, of course, is the tissue pull. When you do the tissue pull, as you do the tissue pull, that's another thing. A lot of times people will use their pointed part of their finger instead of the flat part of their finger. They use the flat part of your chiropractic index finger to sweep, and you're not digging a garden. It's a sweep that should be not dramatic. The patient should barely feel it. You know, if you're digging in too hard, that's too much. And when people feel that, they're going to resist. You do the roll in, and here's where people do it. So most people have way, way, way too heavy hands. And you know what I mean if you've been adjusted knee chest by somebody who has a heavy hand. You think, oh my goodness, what's getting ready to happen to me here, right? They might even have a light adjustment, but they have a heavy hand. When you have a heavy hand, that's going to increase that resistance. And then the set down. The set down, if you get heavy on that, if you get too heavy on that, that can also be a place that's going to cause resistance. So you have to really master, and to be an artist at this knee chest adjustment, you really have to master the ability to do the tissue pull, to do the roll in, and to do the set down in such a way that you make everything tight. You tighten down the hatches, if you will. You make everything tight. Tissue pull pushes it this way, roll in pushes this way, and that way your thenar eminence is you know, tightly on the bone, but with little force. The set down's done. It has to be tight, but with little force. There's an art to that you have to develop over time. If you watch me adjust, or watch Dr. Dalius adjust, or even Dr. Anderson adjust, you will see that we don't use a lot of force. And the reason why we don't use a lot of force is because we don't have to, all right? And the reason why we don't have to is simply because we're getting all of this right, and this right here is where mastery lives in the knee chest adjustment. Of course, you have to do your body drop and get your abdominal contraction, your tricep contraction, and your L5 drop, and the downward spiraling arch. You have to get all that right, but you can do that all beautifully, and if you mess this up, you're still messed up. Let me say it another way. Okay, let's say that you're absolutely lousy at step 6. No, let's don't make you lousy, because it's not going to help being lousy at anything. Let's say you're mediocre at step 6. You have an okay downward spiraling arc, and you have an okay abdominal, you have an okay timing, and so on and so forth. It's okay. It's not stellar, but it's okay. But you're absolutely excellent at these right here. You're going to get far better results than if you're excellent, absolutely supremo wonderful at step 6, but you're average at this. I want to make that point. This is where mastery lives. I'm making that point. I just want to keep on emphasizing that. So I hope you learn that. If you learn that, I'm going to tell you it'll make your life, it'll make your patients' lives enriched. Okay, so name 3 things you can do to reduce internal resistance with patients. Well, there's a lot of things. We have each of the 6 steps, which I've actually outlined. Intention, you and the patient, very important, and proper listening. And we don't really have this on here, but I would also put on here proper timing, could be one. Adjusting somebody when they don't need to be adjusted, or it's not going to affect you as bad as far as reducing the resistance. But the proper listing is very important too. That's where we do the X-ray boot camp, we do the teaching. Make sure you get the proper listing. And for the knee chest table, listing is more important than on the side posture. Why is that? Because when you put somebody in the knee chest posture, as we've explained, there's paradoxical motion in there. The atlas is going down the hill. You get maximum separation. You get a counter rotation between the occiput and the atlas. And the set down is tractioning down the cervical spine. Everything's tractioning down. So if you are actually adjusting, and let's just put it this way, if you're actually adjusting, let's say this is the left side and the right side, and the atlas is slipped this way, what's going to happen when you get them in right rotation going like this is your atlas is going to continue to move this way, the occiput's going to move this way, you're tightening down. So if you actually adjust from this side right here, you're actually going exactly opposite. You're actually torquing that down further. So in the side posture, you're actually going to have more of a neutral situation. It's not going to be as good because you do have laterality concerns, but you don't have all of the, let me just say it this way because I don't want to make this confusing. You have the X, Y, Z axis of the misalignment, yaw, pitch, and roll of the misalignment. Well, one of these axes is laterality. One of this is the rotation, and the other is actually the pitch at which the anterior tubercle, the atlas, goes up in the superior fashion. I'm sorry I'm going through that. If you don't know the biomechanics, that's got to be, that was just crazy for. I apologize. But anyway, you have three directional misalignment. When you're on the side posture table and you adjust them on the left or right, you're really only addressing, from the side that you're adjusting, you're only addressing the lateral component of the misalignment. You're not really addressing the rotation or the pitch from being on that side. You do that from your pisiform on the transverse process, and you're applying the torque and the toggle. So the torque and the toggle take care of the rotational components, if you will, and takes care of the pitch, if you will. So, but the laterality is the only thing affected. But in the chest table, all three of those are in play because of the paradoxical motion. So I want to put that out. Okay, so name 4 things discussed in the concussion of forces video that can happen as the result of external force. Well, we can have a fracture, dislocation, subluxation, misalignment in varying degrees, and we know how that goes, right? You get a, somebody sprains their ankle. Or breaks their ankle, if you will, breaks the fibula or whichever, and when you break a bone, it's going to dissipate force. But let's say it doesn't break a bone, it could cause a dislocation. But maybe it's not enough to dislocate something, but that force travels from larger masses to smaller masses. So if this is a car going this way and this is a truck going that way and they hit each other, the end result is what? And they're going the same speed? You're going to have a net going that direction. Why is that? Because force travels from bigger objects to smaller objects. And so the pelvis is bigger than the lumbar spine. And the lumbar spine, I'm not going to take it all the way up, but the lumbar spine is bigger than the cervical spine. And of course, the atlas axis is butted up against the head. So since it's butted up against the head, where is that force going to land? That force is going to, if it's not dissipated here or dissipated here, it's going to travel right on up, and that's the way somebody can sprain their ankle and actually subluxate themselves or land on their hip bone or whatever. And of course, misalignment would be something that's less than a subluxation there. Okay, explain how a toxic chemical can produce a subluxation. Chemical, emotional, and physical stress that rises above innate's ability to use or adapt to produce subluxation. This can be a confusing one. I don't have any extra things to write on, but let me just see if I can do it this way. I want to take just a moment to see if I can explain this, and that's this. I don't have, okay, so let me go back a couple of places. There we go. Now, if you'll give me just a little bit of room, I'll write on here. Okay, all right. So let's look at this right here, all right? So let's talk about when a baby's first born. When a baby's first born, really all you have is a brainstem. Certainly you have some brain tissue up here, but it's really not as functional. As the baby develops, the brain develops, and the more developed the brain gets, the more it does something called lateral lateralization. Lateralization is where we start getting specialty functions that are actually unique to the human system. So, in other words, the most primitive animals, if you will, are really going to just have brain stems and a little bit up here going on for sight and for, you know, hearing and stuff like that, special places in the brain. But as we grow up and develop, we start, it's really is something that they say, hey, you know, we have a brain and opposable thumbs. Well, as it turns out, the fact that you have opposable thumbs means that your brain has actually developed in a certain way that's unique to the human system. And so all these things work together. I could go a lot farther down this road, but I just wanted to give you the idea that the brainstem is really the center of action in the human body. It's what drives the autonomic nervous system. It's what turns on the brain. The top part of the brainstem, the midbrain, is actually through the thalamus what turns on the brain. The brain doesn't come on if the upper part of the brainstem is not online. The digestion and the gut, the liver, and all those important organs have a huge play from the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve comes out of the medulla. So the vagus nerve is it's kind of like the nerve for the parasympathetic system. And so, but anyway, I could go farther into this, but let me just say that the brainstem is the center of action in the body. So since it's the center of action in the body, when there's stress on the body of any kind, and that stress could be chemical, that stress could be eating a food sensitivity, that stress could be some kind of poison, that stress could be a lot of things, a chronic infection, that stress could be anything, and it's going to have a tendency to manifest itself in the way this brainstem is processing and functioning. And when it does that, it's going to alter our patterns, and it's going to actually cause problems in this area, and it weakens that area. And so your upper cervical spine is going to have a path of least resistance. When the brainstem loses strength because it's fighting these stresses, then your atlas axis will go to their path of least resistance, go into their major subluxated position, and so on and so forth. That's the reason why the sicker somebody is, most generally, the harder it is for them to hold adjustments, because their body is in a weakened state, and you adjust them. It's not like you just turn on the power. You adjust them, and then the body has to go through, and the brainstem has to go through this process of actually revitalizing and getting the energy in there, because it's kind of one of those things that they're subluxated and they're sick, but because they're sick, it's hard to get them out of subluxation. Now, it doesn't mean we don't do it. Of course, we're doing it every day in the upper cervical, but as we adjust them in the beginning, we're probably going to be adjusting them more so than we are later on down the road. And why is that? Because the healthier they get, the more they hold their adjustments. The healthier they get, the more they hold their adjustments. So when somebody comes in and they're very sick, if you look at that case, and I think it's in volume 18, the HIO miracle case, right? I think it's volume 18, and you look at that, how many times they adjusted that person. I don't remember. It's been years since I actually read that story, but they were adjusting like on a weekly basis for, I don't remember what it was, 10 weeks or something like that, and we thought, wow, adjust them a lot. And I don't know what that case was, but that case turned around. But I think that one of the things that happened was that case was so sick, there was so much stress on the brainstem that even though they were adjusting them, it took time for the body to revitalize and the brainstem to revitalize, where it could start holding that adjustment, and the person started coming back. There's a lot more to this, and I would love to go over it, but I think I want to keep it there because I'm going to talk a little bit more about this at the end of this program. Okay, so which of the 5 types of adjustments are not adjustments? Of course, this is the kiss. Not enough force to even entice innate to make the adjustment. Then there's treatment adjustment. It's a treatment adjustment is more than a kiss and less than adjustment. It delivers sufficient force to stimulate surface impulses, but maybe relaxes a trifle, jars and stuns vertebra, subluxated, but does not follow through. So this is kind of not a push and a shove, but it is a little less than a push and shove. Which of the 5 types would be most likely to cause harm? And what we say about that is the push and the shove. Push and shove adjustment is delivered with heavy thrust. It's a heavy hand, heavy head thrust, slowly done. It is usually with a stiff arm, and when at the bottom of the thrust, it's held and pushed down. And this is a bad adjustment. By far the most dangerous. Okay, what keeps the adjustment from being an adjustment? This is from volume 18, of course. And the answer is, and this comes from volume 18, adjustment would be just that if, once corrected, done, correctly done, is left alone. It ceases to be that at any time a chiropractor keeps fooling with good work, well done, and refuses to leave well enough alone. Now, let me just say this. So, BJ wrote that, and, you really don't want to add or subtract away from what, what BJ said. He was, he's BJ. But I would say this, that sometimes, there's an art to be able to do an adjustment and to mastery. And let me just say it this way. We walk through this thing that the very first stage of doing an adjustment is we really are, and you've heard this, we are in unconscious incompetence. We are incompetent, but we're at a loss as to why. So, let me write this. So unconscious incompetent, and sorry about that, should be an E, okay? So once we have some training, then we have just a little bit of training, we actually recognize, we're conscious of the fact that we're way incompetent, right? And then after we pass this stage of being a conscious incompetent, the next stage is we actually become what's called a conscious competent. What that means is we can be competent at the action. We can be competent at the 6 steps. We can be competent in getting the audible. We can get competent at this, but only when we're concentrated fully 100% on each step. Okay, this is my tissue pull, this is my roll in, I'm supposed to sit down, I do this, I think that, I do this. But this is, you're in the place where you're thinking, you're using your head, right? You're not using innate, you're using your head. Then there's a step when you get to mastery that's called unconscious, and I said an either. An unconscious, a competent. What this is somebody who, when they go up to make an adjustment, they're not thinking about the steps. They're not thinking about anything. Now they're going to do what I do if you do what I suggest, and that's video yourself adjusting, primarily even your first adjustment on a new patient. You can constantly watch yourself to make sure you're not slipping. I say that, but if you are able to just walk up, you do your steps, you're not overthinking it. We tease somebody in this course about need to drink a little bit of wine before they adjust to somebody. But if you're not, if you don't have to think about it, that's when you get to the adjustment with the extra something. Now, just because you're not thinking about it doesn't mean you're there. The adjustment with that extra something has to do with with this case right here, what would be the main criteria for B.J. Palmer to say if a good adjustment was made? Oh, I'm sorry, it's on this slide after this. I apologize. I'll get back to that. But he said, I don't know. It might take several days to find out, meaning, of course, that time would prove whether the vertebra remained in proper position or not, and only time could prove. In other words, you can't just adjust somebody and say, man, that's a great audible. I felt great about it. I know it's wonderful. That was a perfect adjustment. We don't know. We will not know until we see how long it holds. But keep in mind, we have chemical, we have emotional, we have different stresses that's going on in the system that will possibly hamper that line getting completely straight. So there's other things that's in the mix. It's not just a straight zero-sum game there. Okay, so name 2 things that differentiate the chiropractor who delivers the adjustment with the extra something and the adjustment chiropractor. And that's it. It has become a habit. And when all elements are correct and chiropractor knows when to and when not to and does not try to improve upon vertebra, BJ was really on this thing here, of not over-adjusting, and I agree with that. But I really wanted to make the point that if you're still in that place where you have to think about everything you're doing, then it's going to be hard for you to deliver that adjustment, the extra something. It is the adjustment, the extra something that we really, really, really see the fantastic cases happen. Okay, so tissue pull, what's the direction for PIL? It is 6 to 9, and I think Dr. Anderson has some graphics here. There you go. There you go, 6 to 9. All right, for ASR, it's going to be 9 to 12. Just going to review quickly through these here. Okay, 9 to 12 for an ASR. Yes, that's right. I was checking that. And watch this one right here. We're going to go 3 to 12 on a PLI. It's going to go like this, up underneath, and that's perfect where you want to be, right there, up underneath it. You don't want to have your contact up here on the axis, because if you do, you'll have a tendency to drive that, what we used to call that a brainstem bruiser, right? We used to tease about that. So we don't want no brainstem bruisers, okay? So ARS, 12 to 9. I'm sorry, I want to do the graphic. Right there. Okay. What is the purpose of holding the patient's head during a wall or supine adjustment and keep the head from moving away from the adjustment? Basically, what it does is you're really trying to cut down jarring. Anything that causes jarring is going to cause the adjustment to be more harsh for the patient, and it's also going to cause the line on average not to stay as good, and they're not going to run as clear because there's too much clanging, clacking around. Going back to my first question is, how do you reduce the internal resistance? Well, one of the things you do is you get all 6 steps right. If you get the 6 steps right, you're going to reduce the amount of jarring. You don't want jarring in there. Jarring is what is the menace to a good set. Okay, in all special cases, what is the doctor trying to achieve regardless of position? To emulate as close as possible in knee chest position, utilize as many of the knee chest position advantages. Yeah, and that's basically it. This is, the long and the short of this answer is that when you're in the knee chest posture, we have paradoxical motion, we have the atlas going down the hill, we have coupling muscle, and we traction down the cervical spine. All of this is for the effect is to tighten down in every aspect what's going on at CO, C1, C2, so that we can use very little force to overcome that and reduce the amount of jarring that we're going to have on a patient. So that's bottom line. Okay, so specialty cases. Let's talk a little bit about this. Okay, so this is worried about getting down on the table. Okay, so this is something that, oops, sorry, Dr. Dalius has talked about right here. If somebody has a hard time getting on the table, or worried about getting on the table, have them put one leg right here, and you can even take this arm and hold on to them and have them put one knee down first and then put the other knee. So this is a nice, quick way to do it. If somebody can't bend one knee, this is what we do. We just have them straighten it out like that and just do it like this. Keep in mind, don't get in a hurry to try to do wall adjustments or supine adjustments or some kind of variation that's not on the chest table. Don't get in a hurry to do that. Why? Because the magic, I don't know if I like that word, but the magic of the knee chest table is, guess what? Ding, 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 the knee chest table. It's because, this relaxes here, that relaxes that perfectly. We get paradoxical motion, the atlas down the hill, we can tighten it down, we get the set down. All these things are perfect for the knee chest table. I know some people are trying to be really cool, like, oh, let me adjust in the wall or this and that. And I want to tell you this, I haven't adjusted somebody in the wall in, I don't know, 8 years, 10 years. I used to do it some, but I don't do it anymore because I always find a way to get them on that table. I will get them on that table, believe you me. So here's another menace. When somebody has a hunch back like this, now he's hunched up like that. You want to make sure they're relaxing. But let's say you have a big busted lady and she has rounded shoulders. What you want to do is you want to get her neck as close to the bottom of the table as possible, because that way you can have better access to the neck. Because if you try to pull her up like this, there's always going to be air underneath on her and you're going to jar her, right? Or it's a him if he has rounded shoulders. We just generally send that with women. You just so if you have a woman this big busted and rounded shoulders, you want to bring her down the table as far as you can, but still keeping that, keeping the very top of that sternal notch, not sternal notch. You're going to be above the sternal notch, but very top of where the sternum is going to touch that knee chest position. And some people, I've even had to take them off the sternum right there, and they only have their atlas laying up there. So very few, but I've got 2 that I can think of right now that I do. So prone patient can't kneel down. I'm not advising this adjustment at all, because you can't get a set down. You're not getting the relax through here, and this is going to be a jarring adjustment. So if I had to do anything, and they just can't kneel down, if I had to do anything, then I'm going to adjust them on the wall. That's my preference. Okay, so patient too high on the table. If they get too high on the table, keep in mind the knee chest table has the hump like this that goes like that, and this is the knee chest table, right? So you really want your atlas axis sitting in that little sweet spot right there. You get them up too high right there, you're going to create too much air in between, creating jarring. Okay, somebody has torticollis, they can't bend their neck. What are you going to do? Let's say that they have torticollis and they can't turn their head to the direction you need to get them on. What you do is just roll that shoulder down like that. You're going to pick that one up and just make sure that's firm there. Get a good solid set down. Keep in mind, this is my experience with this. If you have somebody that has torticollis, do not baby it. Don't get in there, and this is not the time to see how lightly you can be. I liken it like this, and I even tell patients this. If you are fooling around with a knife and you happen to stick a knife in your hand, the only thing you can do is pull it out, right? So this right here, when I adjust this person, it is likely to cause them some pain. But if I adjust them softly, believe it or not, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it very definitely can cause more pain because you're jarring it and you didn't move it. You'd be surprised. You get in there and get serious about it, get that adjustment done, and so many times you'll see that the patient is amazed that you adjust them. They heard that audibly. They definitely felt the force, but they really didn't feel much pain. So that's just a word to the wise. I've done that before. Here's what I do with somebody in a wheelchair. I have somebody on each side. I put them down. I just get them in the chest position. There's something not shown in here, but I'm going to adjust them up here. But I'm going to have this person right here. They're going to hold their pelvis so they don't fall flip-flop one way or the other. They're going to hold the pelvis steady, and I'm going to get them on the knee chest table, and you can adjust them beautifully. Supine adjustments, I used to do those. I don't like them. Do the wall if you can't do anything else. All right? And this is the wall adjustment. What you want to pay attention to is turn their head, because when you turn their head, you're going to at least get the paradoxical motion, and you're going to get the atlas down the hill. So you're going to have that. And the main thing is watch his line of drive right there. You want to be in that line of drive right there. So used to, when they did wall adjustments, I know in the Kale days, they would just put somebody sideways up against there, but they were losing all the paradoxical motion, and they'd go pretty much straight in. That's really not the best way to do it. You want to do it this way right here. Okay, well, that concludes this part, and I want to go over just a few things before we end, and I'm going to make an announcement. So we have William Blair did a class, and I just thought this was fun. Can you imagine? That's a pretty cool class. I don't know all the people in this picture, but there's some pretty well-known people there. I do know this guy right here. That was Dr. Duff's dad. That's the Dr. Duff that actually wrote the book. So can you imagine? Blair has a conference and Duff is there, and so this guy's a powerhouse and developed pattern analysis better than any human being ever has. He actually took what BJ did and took it to the next level. And then Blair came up with the Blair views and protractor. So arguably he's one of the more important people that's come along in X-ray. So you have a pillar in X-ray analysis and a pillar in pattern analysis. They're all sitting in the same room. Also I like this because Dr. Duff was a master at what he did. But look at him. He's a student here. He's showing humility. He's learning from Dr. Blair, and so that's something we always want to keep in mind. No matter how much we can always learn from other people for sure. I want to put this out here. This is a picture of a lady who is a chiropractor who was in jail, and here's also a chiropractor. I love this. You've probably seen this one before. Here he is adjusting. I'm not, he's adjusting in jail, so I'm not going to complain about him adjusting in this table like this. He should have put him in the chest table. I'm not going to complain about it. I'm just saying kind of a ha-ha there. All right, there's a couple of things I want to go over and talk about. I've been kicking around the idea about doing an upper cervical neuro boot camp. I've been kicking that idea around for some time, and I haven't done one in about 2 to 3 years. And the reason why I haven't done one for 2 to 3 years is because after I did my last one, I really felt like it could be done better. I felt like people could get a lot more out of it, a lot more practical information, stuff that they could learn how to do in their office, stuff they could use for patient education, stuff they could use to do an examination that's very quick but really wows the patient and also can show you more specific what's going on with the patient. And there's just a lot of things in the upper cervical neuro, and quite frankly, I needed to learn more myself. I've gone through, and I'm in the midst of the functional neurology diplomate program. I'm on the last legs of the child development, brain development diplomate program, and I actually plan to take a test in that in November. So so those things are going on. So I'm at the point at the neuro that I understand a lot more about what's going on in the upper cervical spine, and I really want to share it with you guys and share it with anybody who wants to listen. And so what I'm going to do is, starting in September, I'm going to do a series of 2-week boot camps. So in other words, I'm not going to do, because I could actually do an 8 or 10-week boot camp, but who wants to do that, right? So, and it would just be so cumbersome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it off into specific elements. So in other words, I'm going to do a 2-week upper cervical neuro boot camp that focuses on nothing but the history and the examination. Now, you might snooze off and say, history examination, I don't know anything. Well, I can show you from a neuro perspective how to do a really cool examination that'll blow people away, and it will not take you 30 minutes to do. I can teach you to do it in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and learn so much information, and it'll help you lock in patients because they'll know that you're the expert. And you'll be doing things that, you know, people just aren't doing, and a standard is stuff that's not really wacky stuff that's out there. It's very solid, hardcore stuff, and so I'm going to do that. I'm also going to do one on upper cervical neuro and how it applies to patient education and how you can help lock patients in for long-term care and have them understand from a neurology standpoint. Now, I don't mean to be complicated because you can keep these things simple, but I want to make that stuff available to you guys. And I'm going to show you just a couple things just to whet your appetite. Here's a patient that I had came in that was having he has developmental issues. So here's the adjustment right here. Okay. Now this was his hand. This is his hand. Now I'll just show you this right here. The pinky right here, you can check on your own hand, should come up to that fold right there. The pinky should come up to that fold. If it does not come up to that fold, and here we go, and this is standard stuff. This is not something that you'll see on some obscure natural website. This is traditional, you know, diagnostic workups, if you will. But if somebody has that right there, they either have celiac or what they call non-celiac gluten sensitivity. Now, why is that important? Because if you have somebody like that and they continue to eat gluten, you're not going to get that line straightened out because there's going to be too much stress on the system. So you say, oh, I'm talking about diet. Yes, I am. I don't care if you're in Europe or wherever you're at. If you see that sign right there and you don't get them off gluten, you're going to be frustrated in this case. They're not going to get well to the degree that you really want them to. And I wish it wasn't like that, but it just simply is. That's the fact. So, and I will assure you, if you take a patient like that, get them off gluten and get them adjusted, their results will skyrocket. And there's lots of things like this that I want to show you guys, but I just wanted to give you a few things. Look at this guy right here. Look how that smile line right there is deeper on this side, and you can see it's faint on this side. Look at this eye right here. Look at that eyelid. See how that eye's open that much, and on this side the eye's open actually wider. Can you see that? When you look at that, what's happened is the whole right side of the face has some level of what's called paresis. What is that? It's not getting the nerve supply it's supposed to. It's either coming from the left side of the brain or it's coming from the brainstem. Just happened to be this guy came to me because he has memory loss and he's concerned that he has some kind of brain issue going on. Well, guess what? The same place or very close to the same place of the muscle motor strip in your frontal lobe that controls the face is very close to the place where you have memory. So he's struggling with memory, struggling with finding words, and these are all things that are very consistent with what I'm seeing. Now, why would that be important? Why would you want to know that? Well, believe it or not, it might sound like, oh my goodness, I couldn't learn any of this. So I can teach you some tricks that will absolutely just blow you away and blow your patients away. Very simple things, very uncomplicated, very easy for me to tell this person, hey, look, I think this part of your brain up here isn't working properly right here. What we need to do is make sure your head's on straight back here so that the brain is completely able to communicate with that face. Bam, take some x-rays, you start an upper cervical patient there. You can learn so much from the tongue. Here's just an example. right here, when you see somebody that looks like this, you see all that scalloping in there? Oops, I can't get it because I can't write on it. Maybe I can do it this way. You see all this scalloping in here? That's the tongue that has little grooves in it. It means the tongue's swollen up. That can come from maybe a thyroid problem, maybe some GI inflammation. And here again, I'm just showing you these things because there's a few things that you can look at that you can actually help, and you can always tie this stuff back to the upper cervical spine, and I'll show you how. Here's another patient right here. You see how that smile line is deeper there? That eye right there is not open as far as that. That's because this side of the face has paresis. But watch this. You see the wrinkle lines up here? You see those wrinkle lines? You don't see them as much over here. Why is that? Because the whole side of the face, that is a cranial nerve 7 deficit. I'm going to show you how to do that very simply. Here's another one right here. The lady's not really that heavy.
With each step.
This is just a heel to toe. Shows you how the cerebellum's working. Very easy to do that. This is also very easy to do. I don't know if you can see that, but she had a shake right at the end of doing that. Here's another facial asymmetry. You see how that lip comes up this way, like that. If you start looking at this, you'll see this on almost every patient, and I'm going to show you how to use that for your examination. Here's just more tongue stuff. Here's an adjustment, and like I said, the adjustment doesn't have to be that hard. Very easy. Doesn't take a lot. Doesn't take a lot of force there. I wanted to show you this just to wrap it up. I think I showed you this last time, and I put this video in here the last time that you guys were in here. Here's our x-rays. By the way, quick, what's the listing? What's the listing? What's the listing? ASR. There you go. All right. So, and I would actually do that as an ASR. I would do that as an ASR3. You see that right there. Okay. Here's the adjustment right here.
Like that. Good. Now let your stomach fall, shoulder drop, and relax and there you go.
Perfect. Nice little set. Okay. That was our first short leg, and this is after the adjustment. I don't know what this is. Okay. Well, this is my pattern. These are my This is my first two. I didn't put the other one on there, but there's 3 readings, and this is after the adjustment. Still got a little going on there. Not too concerned. But here's what I want to show you here. This was before the adjustment.
Go ahead.
And watch how she walks. This is cerebellum. The cerebellum is what's this? Right there, right there. See, there you go.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you see that? Okay. Now that was before the adjustment, and this is after the adjustment.
Slow. Like that.
You see how much better that is? See, it's very easy for me to take that patient and show them that the cerebellum is really the center of action in the brainstem. The brainstem is the center of the body. I can already tell that person right there that we have improved the brain function and the body function. So anyway, that's going to come out. The Upper Cervical Neuro Boot Camp Series will start the first week of September. You'll be getting information. I haven't put this information out to anybody except for Dr. Anderson and my wife. But I haven't put this information out to anybody. You're the first to know, and we'll let you guys know as you go along. I'm going to look real quick, see if we have any questions. I do not see any questions. I appreciate everybody hanging in there. I'm going to open this up. Say, hey, Dr. Luca, are you there?
Ciao, Robert. Yes.
Hey, how you doing now?
Very well, thanks. And you?
It's good to hear your voice.
Yes.
Yes. Good. Good. We saw your friend, Dr. Zach, the other day. Or actually, he was at the seminar.
I know I have issues with my parents now, and I have to be here. I would have liked to come.
Oh, hey, no stress. We'll see you. We'll see you in the future. All right, guys. Very good. I appreciate everybody. It's been a fun time for us, and we'll speak with everybody later. Go to the Facebook page. Keep on that page.